do it. Brant, Jim Harbaugh is going to be the coach of the Michigan Wolverines for all 12 games, or so we think. This has been a whirlwind, right? You hear about this months ago. It was basically Harbaugh going to the NFL, and then he wasn't going to the NFL, all mixed in with the Matt Weiss stuff and what he was doing on the computers. He gets fired. Harbaugh under investigation from the NCAA for Cheeseburger Gate, or however you want to make fun of that, but basically doing some recruiting during a dead period during COVID times that he should not have been doing. NCAA says that he was not cooperative or forthcoming with information, says he doesn't remember, could not recall, and so I think the NCAA is pretty fed up with Jim Harbaugh, and this is kind of what Jim Harbaugh does, right? Everywhere he goes, he is not going to cave into anybody, and I think the NCAA is frustrated. I think fans are frustrated with the NCAA, their inconsistency, the way they rule on things, the way they arbitrarily say that's 4 games, but someone else who does something 10 times worse may either get 2 games or just a little slap on the wrist. Maybe they get an even higher punishment. I mean, it's just so inconsistent across everywhere, which I think is people's frustration, whether you're a Michigan fan or not. The NCAA is quite laughable. But they come back around after the rumor came out that Jim Harbaugh would be suspended for 4 games, and that was right before Big Ten Media Days. And then we find out just over the weekend that Jim Harbaugh is not going to be suspended 4 games this year. But they are punting this to the discipline committee, or whatever they're called for the NCAA. Whoever makes up that committee, I don't know. But they are going to punt this to potentially next season in 2024. Brant, your thoughts about all of this and the impact it has on the Michigan Wolverines?
No impact on the Michigan Wolverines this season. I think it was a way to grab headlines, the way that the NCAA likes to grab headlines, stay relevant, I guess. Obviously, they were upset that he couldn't remember what happened. I'm not going to say lie because I'll take him at his word for it. Whatever. I don't care, Dave. For me, it's a non-starter, right? Like, it doesn't matter in the long run whether he gets 4 games this year. Maybe he ggets 4 games next year. Maybe he's not here next year, Dave, right? We talked about that. But it wasn't going to make or break for this team either way if Jim Harbaugh was on the sidelines for those first 4 games. However, I think this speaks to the bigger problem that the NCAA has, which is these conference commissioners need to get together and get themselves a czar of college football, if you will. Get someone that is a Roger Goodell of college football and just start regulating some of this conference realignment with NIL and transfer portal. Get all of these things under control and just have 5 voices come to one voice and then give it to the media or give it to the fans or whatever. But it is just a nightmare right now. And I say 5 commissioners, but really I could only mean 4 because the Pac-12 has apparently fallen apart, Dave, this summer. So also that's a mess. So I think college football definitely needs one person to kind of step in and just start kind of forming what college football will look like moving forward with a 12-team playoff. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, the NCAA is an absolute mess. This situation is an absolute mess. I don't think it has any impact on this season, quite frankly. I don't think it would have if he was suspended the 4 games. I think Michigan, everybody knows, it's no secret to anyone, they've got a cupcake schedule through the month of September. I mean, you can argue that Rutgers opens Big Ten play, right at the end of that would have been suspension. But Michigan was going to win those 4 games. Harbaugh could have coached through all the practices. He just couldn't have been there at the game. So I was fully prepared for it. I mean, it is what it is. It's kind of whatever at this point. The NCAA has needed leadership for a very long time. When I look at what a mess the NCAA is right now with, as you named it, the NIL stuff, the transfer portal stuff. I mean, these are bigger fish to fry. I'm not saying that there should not be consequences because you broke the rules or allegedly broke the rules. Then there's consequences. So I'm not against it. It's just interesting to me, right? Where the NCAA tends to focus their energy when everything else is on fire. It's like, maybe we can figure out this Harbaugh situation. He's kind of annoying and weird, and they're try to make a point. But Brant, I got a follow up question for you, because let me play devil's advocate. If this was Ryan Day, and this was the exact same situation, recruiting during the dead period, not being truthful or forthcoming, and then it unfolds and unravels just like this. Then all of a sudden he's not suspended. As a Michigan fan, your perception change on any of that?
In the past, probably, but today, in today's age, Dave, I don't care. Like, you could tell me that Saban was doing this, that Kirby Smart was doing this, Brian Day, insert coach name. I don't care. Like, the transfer portal has changed everything. NIL has changed everything. Like, if you told me that, Kyle McCord was getting $1 million to stay with the Buckeyes, whatever, or C.J. Stroud came back and he made $2 million, like, what do I don't care. Like, you just have to go win the games on the field, Dave. And at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. I really wouldn't care. Like, I know that they are upset. Ohio State fans are upset because Jim Tressel, in a different era, got in trouble for the tattoo gate, whatever. And he ended up losing his job, obviously. But this is a totally different era that we're dealing with, Dave. And all these kids are getting paid. And it's just a different era, man.
It is. I think the Tressel thing is interesting. It's very interesting to me. Because, you can argue, though, that this recruiting thing was pre-NIL, right? And before things maybe got super crazy. I can't remember. Maybe the transfer portal was happening at that point. But, I don't know. I think that we just have to look at this, right? Like, take off the Go Blue glasses and look at this for what it is and say, yeah, I'm with you, Brant, to be honest with you. The NCAA is a mess. I think we both are in agreement that if you break the rules, there should be consequences of some sort. But can we get some consistency? Can we get some leadership? Because we don't have it, and we haven't had it.
What are the rules, Dave? Like, you can't sit down and be like, I know the rules. You don't know the rules. Nobody knows the rules.
Yeah, Jameson Williams doesn't know the rules, so...
that's funny. But, I get where you're going with it, and I just think at the end of the day, someone has got to get these football teams together and figure out a way to evenly disperse money, NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, get everybody on the same page. Because, Dave, you've already said, bring your broom, it's a mess.
Yeah. So last question here before we move on and talking Michigan's upcoming season, the 10.5 win total. We will get to that shortly. But an interesting point was brought up by Mike Valeni and Rico Beard on 97.1 earlier this week on local radio, and I wanted to get your take on this, because while those guys annoy me to a certain extent, I thought Valeni made an interesting point, or just something to think about, which is, did Harbaugh kick the can down the road to the discipline to next year because he knows that this team in this season is the best chance that he's going to have to win a national championship, which I don't think anybody could. You can't really argue that point. This is the best chance that he's had to win a national championship. The roster he's bringing in, does he know that? And is he going to go into next year knowing that he's probably leaving the program? Whether that is the NFL, I think you can argue the NFL clearly, Jim Harbaugh clearly wants the NFL and they do not want him. But maybe he rides off into the sunset. God knows what Jim Harbaugh is going to do. But I think it's an interesting point to say, that would just be the most Harbaugh thing ever, right? Like, he knows this discipline is coming. He scapegoats it this year so he can coach this season and go one last chance at a national championship, maybe one last time with J.J. McCarthy as his starting quarterback. And then, maybe he heads out after this and he never even serves that consequence. Insert Sharon Moore into the head coaching gig next year. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But I guess my question is, what is your thoughts on that? Like, do you think that this tees up a scenario where Harbaugh kicked the can down the road because he knows he's not coming back?
No, Dave, I don't. I think it was a matter of, I don't know if he thinks he can get back in the NFL or not. I would obviously push it out too if I was going to leave. I think there's always a chance he ends up leaving. But I think this goes back to the same point of the NCAA is so toothless that Jim Harbaugh in Michigan sat there and said, don't give up. Just keep pushing them until apparently they're going to waffle because they're so toothless. So I think they had to wait the NCAA out, and they did. And they would have had a serious I mean, I don't know if the NCAA would have had people on the sidelines. Like, if Harbaugh was like, I'm going to walk out on that field. I don't know what you guys are going to do, but I'm going to do it. Like, did they blink first, Dave? Because that's what I think actually ended up happening was, I mean, sure, kicking the can down the road is an interesting theory, but I think it has more to do with the fact of they just pushed the NCAA to make a move. And in the past, Dave, the NCAA wouldn't have let them get away with it because they had a little more teeth to them. Since the NIL era, they're scared of everything.
I think you're right in the sense like who's going to blink first. I think Harbaugh and his attorney called their bluff. I think there's a lack of evidence here. I'm not saying it didn't happen. It sounds like it probably did.
Right.
But I think there's a lack of evidence, and where there's a lack of evidence, there's a lack of wrongdoing that you can be convicted of. And I think the NCAA forced their hand to say, look, we know, just take the punishment. All you have to do is say, I messed up. You can still coach at practices. You can't be at these 4 cupcake games. And Jim Harbaugh looked him dead in the eye and said, nope, still don't remember. And I think he is calling the bluff. So, you know what? As somebody that cannot stand the lack of leadership in the NCAA, I'm all in for this. This is all good. Let the show continue. Let Jim Harbaugh coach this season out. Let's see how this shakes out. So,